Hey y'all, it's Heel Heat time.
Hi everybody and welcome to Heel Heat. My name is George Coles and this is our WWE show for the week. Let's jump right into it. First with the so-so portions of the night. Basically they weren't bad, they weren't good, they were just there. First we get the Divas tag team match with Paige and Nikki Bella versus AJ Lee and Brie Bella. It's a tease that's the first time the Bella twins have been opposite sides of each other. We see Nikki being the heel, attacking after the match. Paige and Nikki pick up the win. To me, combining these two stories, AJ and Paige being so much better ring talents than Nikki and Brie, it kind of, I don't know. To me, it just was just there. And I truly enjoyed both Paige and AJ Lee's ring work. Just the combination with them and this silly Bella storyline that's continuing just made me go, I don't care. Now the next match is somewhat on the same situation. We had the Usos and Sheamus versus the Goldust and Stardust and Cesaro. The addition of Cesaro and Sheamus kind of spices up a bit, but I'm really, honestly, and I enjoy both teams, getting tired of seeing the Dusts and the Usos go up against each other. Either bringing in a new team for them to challenge, have them challenge made-up teams on the roster. I'm tired of this being at least once a week we get some form of that match. Usos and Sheamus pick up the win. I mean, I don't know. Just to me, it's getting very stale and very repetitive, which is just lazy in my opinion. Next up, we have the bad portions of the night. First one I want to talk about is Big Show versus Bray Wyatt. Ends in a DQ when the Wyatt family, Harper and Rowan get involved. It is dumbfounding to me how the WWE could get a character who's so hot and so getting over so rapidly, and the fans are cheering for him and the fans are buying into it, with a character like Bray Wyatt that's so unique, it's so different, yet they continue to, I don't want to say bury him because bury is a strong word, they continue to mishandle his career. The more you give us Bray Wyatt losing to people he shouldn't, and at this point in his career, Big Show shouldn't be beating a guy that should be coming into being an upper tier talent. It's dumbfounding that you got a kid that could be a megastar, could be the biggest heel of the next decade, yet he's losing to guys like the Big Show, losing to guys like Chris Jericho, which both of them future Hall of Famers, but they should be being used to make Bray Wyatt look better instead of make Bray look worse. Just my opinion, just silly how they're doing it. And his force should come off as being so strong that it takes someone like a John Cena to derail him, that it takes a Brock Lesnar, that it takes someone of that caliber to face off against Bray Wyatt. Just my opinion. Now the next thing on our bed, this is probably the thing that I dislike the most. Cameron versus Naomi on a feud that was started 3 months ago, 2 months ago, whatever it would be. And it kind of dropped and only brought back because of Total Divas. Just not a good match. What we seen, and if you watch Total Divas, which I do, don't ask me why, I just watch it out of habit now. It's not really a great show. It's tremendously scripted. Just a silly show, to be honest with you. But I do watch it, and what was said to Cameron is that she's she's a little bit behind Naomi's talent, and it's very obvious when you throw the two of them in the ring together. Cameron would do well to go back down to NXT, and you've seen even if you didn't watch Total Divas, you've seen that when they talked about that previewing the match. Not a knock on Cameron. She could eventually turn out to be a very good wrestler. She was brought in as a dancer. She had 3 months in developmental, and she was pushed to the roster. I don't know how many wrestlers would thrive in that situation. Just 3 months of training and you're on the main show. I mean, then for the next 2 years, you're put in either tag matches or multi-member tag matches where you only maybe get 5 moves in, so you don't really learn. But anyway, that's all a different time for a different story. This leads to a bad matchup on our show, is what we're getting at. Now, coming off of that, we're going to go into our question of the week. Before I give you my answer, we're going to get some of the answers from our friends here. First is from my cousin John. Let me give you the question. The question of the week last week was, who was your favorite Russian gimmick? And John puts, Nikolai Volkov. Considering I was born in 83, me and my cousins always wrestled, and I always hit him with that ruthless Russian sickle. He was the first to pop in my mind. Volkov was good, solid wrestler. Nice pick there. Next is from Steve Tatanani. Ivan Koloff, the Russian Bear, the man who ended Bruno Sammartino's 7-year WWF title reign. Huge accomplishment for a wrestler with a legendary career. Also, he was very dominant 6-man tag team with his nephew Nikita Koloff and Crusher Khrushchev. Their wars they had with Dusty and Magnum TA are legendary. Totally agree. And last but not least, our friend Joseph Hatcher. Nikolai Volkov, because he was a dominant character, was very entertaining and talented to me. Volkov doesn't quite get the respect he deserves, and during the Rock and Wrestling era, we've seen him as a tag team partner for the Iron Sheik and doing his own thing, and a Hulk Hogan foe at times. In the 70s, he was more of a serious contender. Ivan Koloff, which Steve mentioned, one of the WWF champions. I believe he's only the 3rd, maybe the 4th WWF champion without me actually going and thinking. I believe it went from, if I remember correctly, it went from Buddy Rogers to Bruno Sammartino to Ivan Koloff to Pedro Morales and back to Bruno. Or no, after Pedro it went to Stan Stasiak and then back to Bruno. If I remember correctly. I could be wrong. If I'm wrong, let me know. Put it in the comments down there. I'm just going off of personal memory. But I think he hit on a great thing. Ivan Koloff, the Russian Bear, not only was that, but he was a centerpiece. In the 70s, he's one of the main stars in the WWF, which would eventually become WWF, which would eventually become WWE. But also, he was a megastar in the Jim Crockett promotion, which was one of the flagship organizations in the NWA. Him and his nephew Nikita were a great team. Crusher Khrushchev, who would go on to become Smash, was a great addition. When they had the 6-man titles, that was some awesome teams they had. The Russians were feared. They had, legendary fights with the Road Warriors, with the Rock and Roll Express, which basically Dusty and Magnum TA, all your great tag teams of that era, the Russians were right along in there. And I agree with Steve that Ivan Koloff, personally, is my favorite. And I think he doesn't quite get the respect he deserves. He's a guy that probably should have been in one of the first 3 or 4 Hall of Fame classes, but hasn't made it there yet. And I don't understand why. His contributions are legendary. His matches are legendary. His feuds are legendary. It makes no sense to me. So I agree with Steve. Ivan Koloff, the Russian Bear, is my favorite Russian. Nikita, probably close. Nikolai, close. I like all those guys. Boris Zukov, I enjoyed a lot. I think I enjoyed him more than most people did. I thought he was a good wrestler. A lot of people didn't, but I enjoyed him. Now, for our question of the week for this week, we have Dean Ambrose out shooting a WWE movie. If you were to cast a WWE movie, let's say you get to make whatever movie you want with under the WWE Studios platform, who would you want on their current roster to be the star of your movie? Could be a comedy, could be a horror, could be a action movie, could be a romantic flick. Let us know what you think. Who would you make your star of your WWE movie? Hit us up on our Facebook, hit us up on Twitter, put it down where? Down in the comments. And make sure you hit like and share when you're commenting. Also like us, share us, get our name out there. Now, coming off of that, we're going to go into the good portions of the night. First thing, I'm going to mesh two different segments because it's basically the same, a continuation. We see the night start off with Paul Heyman and John Cena. Cena taking Heyman to the back, having Khali watch over him so he can't escape. So if Lesnar doesn't show up, Cena will fight Paul Heyman. If Brock Lesnar does show up, Cena's going to fight Brock Lesnar. He tells us he's going to go at halftime of the show, which actually, come to find out, rumor is that they put this segment on halftime of Monday Night Football, which I guess is a lot of times the male demographic, which is a lot of their audience, if they're watching Monday Night Football, switches over to see what's on Raw during halftime. So it's a perfect idea to try and captivate the audience to keep them tuned into Raw and not turning back to Monday Night Football. I think they did it a little bit at the expense of the main event or the main segment or the go home segment, whatever you want to call it, of the night. That's just my opinion though. I think you still put the main characters and the main story in the main event. Give them something else here. And it speaks as much to their commitment to the mid-card and their commitment to anything but the main event that they think that this is the only thing they can put on there to grab viewers. Whereas if you built the mid-card up, like, let's say back in the, and I hate to do this because everybody does it, let's say back in the Attitude Era, if you switched over to Monday Night Raw at halftime during Monday Night Football or turned over from Monday Nitro, you could see something that's considered a mid-card match, something along the lines of a Jeff Jarrett versus D'Lo Brown, that you'd want to stay and watch. That the mid-card was interesting enough to keep you watching. You know, you had guys like DX, you had the D'Lo Browns, the Nation of Domination, you know, Val Venuses, the Brood. You had all this undercard talent that was given chances to shine, that was given storylines to go with, that, you know, made that they had their own fans that would tune in to see them, not only the main event guys. I mean, Monday Night Raw didn't do great ratings just because of The Rock, Triple H, Stone Cold, and Mankind. No, it did great ratings because you had all them guys, plus you had your Billy Gunns, plus you had your Godfathers, plus you had your Owen Harts, plus you had your guys like Farouk, you know, women in there like Sable, Sunny, Jazz, Ivory. There was a little bit of something for everybody. And WWE should take a page out of their own book and realize that let's make storylines for everybody. Usos versus the Dust Brothers every week isn't a storyline. It's just you're throwing the same match out every week. But back on track, Cena pulls Heyman back out to the ring later on during the night. They cut a promo. Paul Heyman, again, very much like Emperor Palpatine in Star Wars, or Darth Vader in Star Wars, goading on John Cena to strike him down so John Cena could become evil, become a bad guy. Cena doesn't take the bait until Heyman mentions something about his mother, which he pushes him out of the ring, which brings out Brock Lesnar, who pretty much walks Heyman to the back. And then they get in a little bit of a fracas. Cena gets a little bit of the better of Lesnar. Lesnar walks away. This should have been the go-home portion. This should be what we're selling the pay-per-view off. Unfortunately, like I said, they place it in the middle of the show. To me, it was silly. Still a good segment, just silly placement. Now, next up, we have Chris Jericho versus Kane. It was a very solid match. Again, just another throwaway match. No real storyline to it other than Kane is coming after Jericho to soften him up for Orton. But an okay match there too. When you got two guys of this caliber, Jericho picks up the win using the exposed turnbuckle to his advantage. We got two guys of this caliber, I don't think they can put on a bad match. The next match we had was Jack Swagger versus Bo Dallas. I like this. I wish they would have kept it to the pay-per-view to put it as kind of a feud ender. We seen them interacting with each other, Bo Dallas coming out and kind of trying to make Swagger a Bo Lever. If you're going to do it on the pay-per-view, I don't think you let the face win on Monday Night Raw, and we'll get into that in a little bit because we have a perfect example of that being wrong a little bit later on in the show. But like I said, I would have liked to see this feud be something that's carried into the pay-per-view. Alas, it's not. I think we're going to see more of it. Just like I said, the booking gets a little bit lazy and they give us matches over and over and over and over again instead of building storylines that build the matches that you want to pay to see. That's just my opinion. Now next up we had Miz and his stunt double Damian Sandow versus Dolph Ziggler and his stunt double R-Truth. Another rehash. This is a rehash from SmackDown the week before. Truth and Ziggler pick up the win. A good match, solid in-ring talent. Just, I'm intrigued with where Ziggler and Miz is going to go. I hope they don't put the belt back on Miz just because I think it serves better for Dolph Ziggler to be the Intercontinental Champion in the show than it does for The Miz, in my opinion. But I could be wrong. I've been wrong before. Next up we have Seth Rollins versus Roman Reigns. And if you remember, I just mentioned with Swagger and Bo Dallas, Reigns picks up the win, even though they're going to wrestle on the pay-per-view this Sunday. My opinion of the situation is you want the face to get retribution. That's what sells pay-per-views, and back in the day, that's what would sell live show attendance, is you want to see the face get his comeuppance. Unfortunately, we get a pretty solid win by Reigns, which to me lessens the effect of if he would have got screwed here and won at the pay-per-view. Just my opinion. It's a little bit different. It was a good match. It's in a good segment. I liked it. I just don't necessarily think it was a proper booking for it. Enjoyable segment. Long term, short term, yes. Long term, no. In my opinion. And finally, we end the night. Like I said, I enjoyed this segment. I just think this should have been a mid-card segment, and the Heyman Cena Brock Lesnar thing should end at the show. Mark Henry coming out with a rally for America, which brings out Rusev and Lana. Mark starts to say the Pledge of Allegiance. Rusev attacks. We see what happens there, leading to their match at the pay-per-view, which is a non-title match at Night of Champions. So that's what you're hyping at the end of the show. Now, don't get me wrong. I think it's going to be a great match. I think it's going to be fun to watch. But you should be hyping the title matches for Night of Champions. You should be hyping Ziggler versus Miz, which they did. Maybe that could have been the main event. Cena versus Brock Lesnar should have been The main segment of the night, no doubt about it. Paige AJ could have been the main segment. Usos and the Dust Brothers could have done something in the main segment. You get my drift. You have to make the titles important, especially going into a pay-per-view that's all about champions. Night of Champions, championship should be important. So I'm just going to roll right into the ratings for this. Now, we have a 1 to 5 scale here. 1 being the worst, 5 being the best. 1's a Great Khali, 2 is a Heath Slater, 3 is a Stardust, 4 is a Cesaro, 5 is a Daniel Bryan. I'm going to give the show a 2, a Heath Slater. The odd placing of certain segments, whether they were enjoyable or not. The way they ended the show, again, enjoyable, but not proper. Reigns winning. Just a lackluster effort altogether, in my opinion, for something that should be the go-home show for the pay-per-view. This should be what's selling you to buy the $9.99 deal on the network or pay-per-view if you're still buying it by pay-per-view or in one of the countries that don't quite have the network yet. This is what should have been the last-ditch effort to get you to buy that. To get you to buy in before Sunday. So you watch this. Alas, it just felt like a subpar Monday Night Raw. Nothing of interest. Nothing really moved any storyline forward. Just overall odd booking and odd decisions. But basically, that's all I have to say about that. My name is George Coles, and this has been another episode of Heel Heat.